This meeting of the New Ulm Public Utilities Commission is now in session. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
I'll offer the motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting, April 24th, 2018.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign for those nays. No. Motion carries. Item number 2A, City Manager Activity Report.
All right, it's been a very busy month in April. Electric distribution received and located approximately 150 Gopher Street One call tickets for the month of April. They actually, between April and May now, they've had 328 total. Water department reflected 149 in the month of April, so pretty active, and it's just going to get more active. Electric distribution processed 33 service applications for the installation of new and or overhead to underground electric conversions. Electric production, peak load for the month was 27,866 MWS occurring on the 30th of the month. So we during the summer we'll get up into 45, 50, 51 possibly. So we're right in the middle. Other things going on. Minnesota Office of Pipeline Safety conducted an inspection of the gas department field records and reviewed their distribution integrity management program on May 7th through 8th. No forced outages in gas. Again, water for the month of April pumped 53 million gallons, which compares to 56 million gallons in last year. Wastewater processed 82.5 million gallons of wastewater. So one can do the math and you'll find out that there's roughly 29 million additional gallons of water that are going through the wastewater stream as compared to pumped into our system. That comes from inflow, infiltration, and other unaccounted for sources. So that's roughly 1 million gallons a day is unaccounted for. It's actually 29 million additional gallons. Energy Services done a few rebates in the month of April. IT has had 113 new tickets for support and projects on our system in the last 30 days. They've actually knocked out 102 tickets completed and finished, and they still have 56 remaining open. What of interest to note, of the 28,842 email messages that the city receives in our system, PUC and city, 7,000 were spam and 399 were blocked because of administrative rules. 0 were blocked due to viruses. Administrative rules would be sites that you're just not allowed to go to on a government computer, which may be perfectly fine with a private but not a public computer here. Financial performance, we're roughly $200,000, just under $200,000 ahead of our projected annual budget status. You see the various departments are either up or down depending on the department. We're going into the summer months and gas is going to be more in the red than not, and then it comes back out of it in October, November, December, because that's when we use our heat. We don't have a lot of businesses that actually use natural gas constantly at a real high level through the year. Human Resources, Chris Dalton, Economic Development Director, Assistant City Manager, started April 4th. Interviews were held for seasonal laborers. We're getting those on board. Those that are out there that still looking for a job, seasonal labor wise, please contact City, New Ulm, PUC, Human Resource Department, because we still have a few positions that we need to fill. And we've got a storeroom helper, boiler operator trainee, gas service technician, electric system technician, and we're just finalizing, we're probably in the last 5 to 7 days of our efforts to interview and fill the utility director position with the PUC. And finally, we want to recognize as Employee of the Month for April was Mary Mullen. She's the account clerk in the finance department. She was employed by Public Utilities from June 1991 until retirement April 27, 2018. Her main responsibility was in the preparation of monthly utility bills. We congratulate Mary on her accomplishment. She was left last week? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago? Man, how time flies. So she's happily retired, and wish her the best.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion on the utility operations report.
I'll make a motion to receive and order file the report regarding utility operations during the month of May 2018.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2B is the Noam Economic Development Corporation Coordinator Report. And I think we have a good listing on the activity for the month. We will not have someone here today to present. So I will entertain a motion there to receive and order file the report.
I'll offer the motion to receive and order file the report from the Noam Economic Development Corporation Coordinator regarding activities during the month of May 2018.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 2C, ATAD and 20th Street lift station odor control upgrades. I think we have a guest speaker.
Yeah, good evening, Commissioners. Dan O'Connor, wastewater supervisor. We don't have AV tonight, so I don't know what the PowerPoint looks like on your computer. I guess we'll start with, we came to the commission here in September of 2016 requesting to go out to bid a project to upgrade our failing ATAD system and do some more control at 20th. So the main components of the project were to look at options to replace our failing Fuchs system and add some good odor control at our main lift station at 1917 South Valley. So a little overview of our process. We have aerobic storage tanks, which travels through gravity thickening, and then we do pre-digestion storage. And with the old process, we had 4 aerobic digesters and then 3.2 million gallons of storage. So ATAD stands for thermophilic aerobic digestion. I think most of the words might be familiar except maybe the thermophilic, and that's just a bacteria that thrives at a certain temperature. In order to produce a Class A biosolids, you need time and temperature to get your volatile destruction and your bacterial destruction. So when we went into the process, we really thought that we were going to maybe look at Fuchs and use a next generation type process similar to what we have right now. The existing system had 32 moving parts, 32 motors, 32 shafts or aerators, and the new generation went to just 8 moving pieces. But we found that it wasn't compatible with our existing system. Basically mechanical failure. It wasn't structurally. All the tanks that we had on site were still usable. So the only really other process we really could choose was this Thermal Process Systems TPS. New generation, once again only 8 moving pieces, compatible with our tanks, and most of the equipment besides an air header and some foam control cones are all outside the tanks, unlike the Fuchs system. So we opened the bids up. I think we had 6 different companies bid on the project. Rice Lake Construction Group got the contract in January, I believe, and then it was go. A lot of communication, a lot of meetings. You know, we're a Class A plant. Class A biosolids are still regulated through the MPCA, but you don't have to get your land permitted. When you go to a Class B, you have to go through a process of filling out an application, submitting maps. It goes to the state, it comes to the county level, it comes to the township level, and then all the neighbors that might be affected by the biosolids application have to be notified, and then obviously a public comment period. So we wanted to try to make this work through the construction to produce the least amount of Class B, but yet not hold back the construction group. So approximate cost is about $4.5 million. That was the TPS package for the equipment to treat the biosolids and the construction to finish it. So some of the challenges, like I said, the Class B, we had to apply for a bunch of land permits to land apply the Class B that we produced, which was about a little over 1 million gallons during construction. The tank interiors, because of the volatile contents of the tanks, needed some rehab, both interior, exterior. Because all the equipment was different, we had a lot of tank penetrations and infills in the tanks. And then one of the big ones, one of the most challenging ones, is probably the heat exchanger and the amount of water we needed to cool the last step of this process. Lots of pictures here. I'm on slide 7. That shows you the tanks when we had the Fuchs system. It shows you the pump room with some feed pipes. As you can see at the first picture, you have the catwalks and you have piping, and you have the sides of the tanks are spiral aerators, and basically you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 openings in the tanks that had to be enclosed, and then of course penetrations for the new equipment. As you look down to slide 10, 11, 12, that shows you what it looks like now with the stainless piping on top of the digesters with the enclosures. The long rectangular tank is the new odor control for the Fuchs system, and then there's a picture of what the pump room looks like now with the Sulzer pumps. So the theory behind it is you're pumping the sludge, that's mixing it, that's breaking it down. You're adding the oxygen to break down this volatile matter to make it a Class A safe soil conditioner. As you move on to the 13th, 14th slide, some more pictures of the inside of the room now, the row of blowers that are feeding the air to the process, a couple penetrations that were new, and some enclosures, some pictures of some construction. You can see one picture of the exterior of the tank, of the deterioration of the exterior brick that needed to be dealt with. The last picture is sort of what it looks like now. Once again, odor control in front of the digesters. The second part of the project was 20th Street odor control ventilation upgrades. We added a new carbon scrubber, replaced the rooftop unit, replaced all the ductwork, and reroute all the new exhaust system to the air scrubber. One of the challenges there was that the lift station sits at the site of our original wastewater plant, an old trickling filter, and behind that, where the putting green used to be, was actually, I believe, the old city sanitary dump. So they did some soil borings prior to putting up the extension to this building to add the odor control, but they had to extend the piles, and then everything that they evacuated out of the area couldn't be used to backfill. So that ended up being about a $20,000 change order. There's some more pictures of the unit we added to the back of the lift station, and then you can see some pictures of the Integrity carbon scrubber itself. Overall project ended up at about $5 million with the initial 4.2 construction and equipment costs, and then engineering consulting. And then I talked about a challenge. I didn't go into it too much, but we needed about 200,000 gallons of non-potable water to cool the meso-air tank. The meso-air is like thermophilic, but it's a different temperature. We cool the last tank, the SNDR tank, to sort of fix the ammonia, so we can eventually decant some of that black water back to the head of the plant. So we have a non-potable system, or non-potable, depending on what side of tracks you live on. We use it for mechanical seals, we use it to irrigate our lawn. It's been in the ground since the 70s, so generally every year, if not every other year, we're digging up part of our yard to replace parts of this system. We didn't want to rely on old pipes in the ground to cool the Mesoid step to the tune of 250,000 gallons a day. So we had to put a pipe in the ground right from our non-potable room, which is from one end of the plant to the other end of the plant, and that was about a $75,000 change order. So the construction went really well. They had 365 days to finish the project. They came on site in March. Preliminaries really started getting into the project by May. By September, they were packing up and leaving. We slowly filled the tanks and started meeting Class A by November, and had some hiccups with some things that we tried. We tried to decant, and I think we decanted a little too much. Sort of messed up our aeration tank and our actual treatment process, and then in turn caused all kinds of foaming in the new ATAB. But we got it figured out now, and things are running pretty good, pretty automated, and I think everybody's happy with the final product. Maybe just a side note, we produce about 5 to 6 million gallons liquid biosolids annually, and we land apply that. So it is a big part of our operation. Besides cleaning the water and making it safe for the environment, we also do produce quite a bit of biosolids that farmers enjoy to have. We do surcharge of $20 an acre because it is high in nutrients that they're looking for: nitrogen, phosphorus, and some micronutrients.
So you talked a little bit about some of the cost overruns.
Yeah.
So in net, did we come in okay, or did we?
Well, $100,000 change order on a $4.5 million project is about 2.5%. When we crunch numbers going from Fuchs to TPS, the old costs were real similar as far as utilities, but the maintenance costs we felt over a 20-year life of this equipment would save us upwards to $1 million. And once we figure out how to decant without upsetting the rest of the plant and then upsetting the biosolids treatment, we're hoping that instead of hauling out 6 million liquid gallons annually, it might only be 3.5, 4 million. Save bottom dollar on how much we're going through diesel fuel and labor to get the product on the fields. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. We'll entertain a motion to receive and order file report on the recent improvements at the wastewater plant.
I'll make a motion to receive and file the report on recent capital improvements at the wastewater treatment plant. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And 3A is about the prepaid gas transaction with BP Energy and Peak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Last month, we tabled the action item on the prepaid to this month. And unfortunately, we don't have the contracts yet completed. And so what I'm just bringing to you is an update on that prepaid transaction. There's still some language within the contracts that our city attorney isn't comfortable with. We've been having emails and conference calls throughout the last month trying to tie some of this language up. There was also a question asked by BP if the utility would be interested in extending the term to a 31-year term rather than a 30-year term due to the economics of the transaction. I think we're open to that. We also have scheduled a conference call for 2 conference calls actually this week, hoping to get the language worked out with both BP and Peak. It has to do with the attorney opinion which is some legal information that's in the contract that Roger would like changed. So we're hoping that that will get changed. So the timeline on this thing, since there's been some hiccups with it, BP and Peak have recognized that we're kind of pushing things. So what they've decided to do is to push this off another month, actually a month and a half. They have a blackout period after they run their books, and they can't go out to sell bonds at that point. And so they're gonna push this off for about a month. So we basically were given an additional month to get these contracts. So we'll be bringing the contracts to you at the June 26th meeting. And the intention then is to, they will go out to sell bonds the first week in August. Still looking at having gas flow the 1st of November. So that's the current schedule that we have right now. Hopefully we'll get some of these contract language issues solved, and at the June meeting you'll have all the information that you need at that time to make a decision on whether you want to sign the contracts or not.
Okay.
Just wanted to comment on this, and that is, staff has put a lot of time into trying to do all the paperwork to meet all the requirements of both BP and the Public Energy Authority of Kentucky, which is called PEAK, and our bond counsel, and our city attorney, and one of the big issues is there's an attorney's opinion regarding the impact of this particular project on our, let's say, bond rating. Can they attach our resources, in some way, manner, or form, which then impacts our own bonding for our own projects? And they're trying to work that out. And as it sits right now, neither our bond attorney nor our city attorney is willing to sign that opinion, because we just don't know. We need more information, and that's the conference calls that Chris had mentioned. But this does give an opportunity for the PUC to look at the general concept again, because there's going to be a lot more work. And if this is something that the PUC says, makes a determination that for the minimal impact and the potential exposure, on our own bonding and all the 30 years and 31 years are now proposing, one has to just kind of ask, is it really all worth it? That's the bottom line. And so I guess I just would, put out to the PUC, we can continue to put staff time in there, but if the PUC was leaning towards, they're uncomfortable with 30 years. A lot can happen in 30 years, given the energy industry. It's a contract. I think the longest that we've ever had a contract for was probably 20 years with our Heartland contract. Maybe a little bit more for the Hutchinson pipeline thing. I can't remember if that was 24 years or 20 years, but somewhere in there. So I guess what I'm basically asking, if everyone is still comfortable, we'll continue. But if there's any reservations, it's kind of like, let us know now, and then we won't spend hours and hours and hours trying to work this thing through. So I guess what I'm saying is there a reaffirmation of proceed towards this? Is this something everybody thinks is still a good idea, or is it, like I said, maybe just a lot of work for the minimal effort?
Well, maybe just to add, to what Brian's saying is, again, to remind you that, when we ran the numbers, it was about 55 cents on the bill. Now, with, when you're looking at a 30-year contract and you're looking at inflation, this is on a percent basis, it's not on a per unit basis. And so as the inflation increases and the years go out, obviously the savings percentage goes down because that's not increasing throughout the year. The only way it would increase would be, again, if they would resell bonds and the interest rate, or the spread between the tax exempt and the regular interest rate would increase, we would be able to get a portion of that increase as well. There is the flip side that that actually would decrease, and then we would have to make a decision whether we want to continue in the program or accept less than the 20-cent minimum that we're starting out with the project. So, you know, as Brian's saying, it's not a huge savings, and there is, in the utility industry, there's a lot of technology that's coming forward. You just want to remember you're committing 20% of our load for 30 years. So that's important to remember as well.
So Chris, can you remind me what the overall expected savings over 30 years if we were to get the 20 cents? for 30
Overall,
years?
on the 20 cents, it was about 1.2 million
Okay.
over
So-
30 years.
Okay. So I guess to your point, Brian, and I know this wasn't necessarily part of the update, but personally, I guess I'm sitting here thinking kind of where I see the staff looking, and we're committing for 30 years. It's $1.2 million, which $1.2 million sounds great until you divide it by 30 and see how much it really is.
And let me add on to that, and then take, let's just say, the 3% inflationary rate,
Right.
and that $1.2 million is really only $600,000 when you,
In real dollars.
in real dollars.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you throw the fact that now they're looking at 31 years. Then you throw in the bond rating, and that is an added piece that scares me
Yeah.
a lot. I guess I have a lot of concern about us moving forward. And it doesn't seem like BP has been the most forthright in how this process is all going either.
Well, I guess I wouldn't necessarily say that. You know, BP, we have a really good relationship with BP. They've been our gas supplier for many years. I think that they may be just as frustrated with some of the requirements that are coming out of this as we are. You know, you're dealing with 3 entities, plus you're dealing with all of the other utilities that are in this deal, and they're from all over. I mean, they're coming from, you know, Texas, they're coming from Kentucky, there's probably some up the northern coast. And significantly bigger utilities than what we are. And they're trying to get these documents to work for everybody. And so it's a big undertaking. I think BP is doing the best that they're doing as well, so.
One of the issues that I think we've overcome, but it still needs to be worked out, is just the confidentiality aspect of it. Minnesota, the PUC does anything, it's public knowledge. And they're saying, in their documents, they're saying, no, it's not, it's confidential. And so, we had a conference call last week sometime, and they had an attorney going like, what? A gas contract, it's public information? I said, well, there's 3 cities that are currently, working. It's Hutchinson,
Austin.
and Austin. And we're all in the same boat. We're all not confidential contracts, and they're just surprised, and we have to, that's a bump in the road that they didn't see coming. And other states must not have that or that openness that Minnesota requires, and it threw them for a loop. And we're just saying, no, we can't do that. Everything we do, when we sign the contract, if the media wants to look at it, we say, here it is, take a look at it. And it's not that way in the private industry, you can do whatever you want. So there's some basic things that we've had to work through that were kind of surprising to me. But I think the one thing that makes this more complicated, if this was just a prepaid purchase contract, it'd be between, let's say, NOAM and BP. we'd sign a contract and we'd say, it's between one provider and one purchaser. But we've got the Kentucky Peak Group, and because the prepay isn't a reduction of the commodity price. You know, if the commodity price was $5 and we're getting 20 cents off, now it's $4.80. That's not really what it is. What they're trying to do here is take advantage of tax-exempt financing versus private commercial financing. And so the interest rate between 5% and 2%. And so that's the part that they're dealing with. That's where the savings come from. And that brings in the third party, and that complicates this thing dramatically. And the amount of paperwork is probably 10 times more for this than it would be just for a simple contract with a supplier. We
Right.
give you X dollars, you reduce your price. That'd be simple.
I think when we started this, we believed that that's what it was going to be, that we would end up with a purchase gas agreement with a vendor to sell us index less a percentage. It ended up kind of snowballing with some of the larger documents that they needed, the ISDA, which is the swap derivative agreement, and some of the requirements that all went along with that, and some market issues that we had to apply for online and things like that. So it did kind of snowball into a bigger type of transaction than I think a lot of us thought it was going to be. We worked through a lot of it. There's still some
I think the paperwork
to do.
can be accomplished to achieve this goal. My question is it the goal? Is it a goal that everybody feels comfortable with? The 30 years, the savings, per se, to the homeowner. I believe we did the math, and I think 800,000, of that 1.2 is actually residential gas, and then the other 400,000 or whatever is actually our industrial base.
In commercial.
And when you're sitting there talking about, let's say a company has a $100,000 a month natural gas bill, which is not unheard of in large, manufacturing plants, $100,000 just for gas. Well, they're going to save $500. Now, $500 is nothing to sneeze at, but some companies may spill $500 worth of product on the floor, and they sweep it up. And, it's not a humongous amount of money that we're going like, wow, I'm glad I did that. Like we say, 55 cents actual, value, closer to probably 30 cents at the end of 30 years of real value to the customer. So I guess I want to have this discussion because if the idea is, there's just not enough benefit for the liability of the 30 years. Maybe 2 years from now something comes up and and Chris brings it to our attention and we go like, oh look, we can save $1 and it's short term, or shorter term. Then that might be something we can look at because we talked. We had a telephone conversation with public finance representative who has done these types of agreements, and he was wondering why this was so complex. Number one, and then number two, he says, when these were popular before 2008, they were $1. They weren't 20 cents. They were a full $1, and it really was something of substantial dollar figures in the end. And he was, I guess, leading us to believe that there are other entities out there that do this same sort of thing. There's just nobody out there maybe right now. A year from now, somebody may put a project together. So I just want everybody to understand where we are in this thing. I think Chris and I and Roger Hippert have had conversations about where we stand, as far as the recommendation, and that would be coming, probably at the next meeting. But I've got concerns. I just kind of look at it and I'm going like, I think we're giving up we're giving up more than we're getting in return. We're giving up options, even though it's 20%, and Austin has how much? That, we got 20% of
We
ours.
were 20%, I
Were they
think
30 or
Austin was a
something?
little bit more, they were at about 35.
And Hutchinson, I think, was higher.
It was higher, they never really said exactly what they were putting in.
But each one of the communities has a different reason to do this. You know, we were looking at it to reduce this, and going like, well, maybe it's not that big of a savings, whereas, I think we believe the city of Hutchinson has got entered into contracts where their prices are really high. I mean, they're reaching for every penny they can find to help reduce it, because at least that was my understanding, that their rates are higher. They went and hedged, they entered into contracts where the gas was much higher, and so, and we hedge a little bit, and probably more than we probably should be, and we'll look at that. But but the bottom line is, we just kind of we need direction. And so this report was here to kind of say, here's where we're at. If we need to go in a different direction, let us know. So,
I came to this meeting thinking I was against it, but I thought, we'll wait until tonight and see what you have to say, and so far, everything has been more negative than, just because of what you've been saying and what you have stated, some of the reasons. And how come Austin is 35 cents and we're only 20 cents?
No,
What is-
they're
Percent.
35%. So they're gonna put 35% of their load
Okay.
in.
Okay.
Everybody is choosing a different,
Yeah.
we're able to choose whatever
Okay.
loads we
we,
want.
we could put 100% of our load down.
Yeah,
The other, the other
That would be
thing
scary, but.
to think about is where our rates are right now with gas. And, the we do, we're involved in a rate analysis that's done with some neighboring communities, which Hutchinson and Owatonna, and some other utilities are in that. And, New Ulm comes in low. I mean, we're in probably the lower 1/3 of the utilities that are being analyzed in our rates. And so we're not looking at, we've got high gas rates, we've got to figure out a way to get them lower. We are already on the lower spectrum, and so, if that plays into your decision at all too, so.
And that, that's, to me, the 30-year contract for what we get in return, we're already in the bottom 1/3. I think, Hutchinson may be in the upper 1/3. I don't know, but from what I've heard is that they're trying to find everything under the sun to get their rates down. And we're just not in that same boat. Every community has made different decisions on how they operate, and we are where we are. So from a position of relative comfort, if you want to call it that, on the gas, we may not be talking that on the electric side, but on the gas side, we're at a good place. So I guess
one other thing was that you keep talking about if we don't buy enough, then they're gonna sell it. And then that depends on how much we're gonna pay, our penalty is gonna be. Well, they don't have a whole lot of incentive to spend a lot of time to sell it to someone that's gonna buy it at a higher price. They're just gonna sell it to anyone, because we'd be making up the difference, right?
Right.
Right, that's the one risk in the transaction
Mhm.
outside of the contract.
Yeah.
They, chances are, you're probably gonna be okay, because when they go out to sell, they're selling gas at index price. And if they're gonna have a little bit of room, they're gonna take 5 cents of whatever, just because of the transaction,
Yeah.
because that's the penalty that we'll pay. But there's an additional 15 cents there that they can play with. And so chances are, there'd be somebody out there that would wanna buy it, because it's 15 cents less index.
It's a
Are they
very
gonna want-
liquid market.
Huh,
It's a
pardon?
very liquid market.
Yes.
There are, I wouldn't even hazard a guess as to how many millions or billions of dollars of gas is traded every day.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I would see that as being pretty minimal.
Yeah.
If you put a discount on what the market rate is, there's somebody out there that's gonna say, I can save 5 cents, heck yeah, I'm buying that.
And we really have that with our hedges right now anyway,
Yep.
because we hedge a certain 70% in the 5 winter months. And there have been situations where you get a really warm December, and you might be right at that or just a little bit below what your hedges were, and we've had to sell back in. And sometimes it's at a small loss. So, that risk is there just with the hedges too. The only way you would avoid that if you just, you bought daily, every day, so.
Yeah, the only uniqueness to them selling to somebody is that because these are all municipal gas entities that are entering into this agreement, and because that's why they're getting the interest rate at tax exempt interest rates instead of taxable interest rates, that when they sell, they would prefer to sell to another municipality. If they can't find a municipality that's willing to take that, they can sell to whomever. And then there's a requirement that they have to, that's like a black mark against
Right, they have to
them.
make it
And they have
better.
they have to fix that within 2 years. Well, the chances of fixing that 2 years is probably pretty good.
Yeah.
If you said 2 months, that might be too short a time for them to fix that sale and replace it with a municipality, or a tax exempt entity, but 2 years.
That would potentially void out the transaction, and it would probably roll out if they had a non-municipal utility in the transaction.
So what happens, I think, is, one of the things that's been interesting to me is BP is not telling me, they're not telling us what they're getting out of this deal. We see our 20 cents. They're not showing their hand and saying, oh, we're all sharing 60 cents. You get 20, BP gets 20, Peak is getting 20, for whatever reason. And they're not, all we're seeing is this. They're just saying, we'll give you 20 cents. And I'm not saying that they're really coming out great, but they are, BP is actually getting $1 billion cash. And they're getting that right up front. And then Peak did the bond issue. They borrowed the money and they paid BP $1 billion. And now we're gonna be paying Peak back and everybody's happy. Well, what besides $1 billion is BP getting out of this deal? I mean, they're getting a customer for 30 years they don't have to worry about. They're getting other things that are probably not real tangible things, I'm sure. But on the other hand, it puts us on the, well, we don't know what's gonna happen in 30 years. They know they've got us as a customer for 30 years. So it's really, to me, it's kind of skewed in one direction. It's skewed toward BP's gonna get the best part of this deal. But at the same time, there is a minor savings. So I want to just have a much, this was a good update, and it was an opportunity to kind of reassess where the PUC wants staff to go. If everybody's saying, yeah, I'm not really interested anymore, or yes, continue on, let's talk about it next month, we'll make our decision next month. That's perfectly fine too. It's just between now and next month, we'll, if we're all thinking no, we're leaning towards many hours of administrative work on behalf of doing the paperwork, which we can do, that's not a problem.
From a bond rating standpoint, if it were to have an effect on the bond rating, is that City of Newell, PUC bond
But just be
rating, or
the
is it
PUC, just be the PUC bonds. It wouldn't be city bonds.
Okay.
Except, well, good question, because.
I don't really know,
because the
because they're
city-
tied together.
Yeah,
They're
we
tied
get
together.
one rating.
Yeah.
The city double diapers the PUC. You got your PUC rating, we got the city rating, and the city is guaranteeing the PUC stuff. So technically, it probably, so we need to have that,
I mean, math.
before we sign anything, we need to have that.
Yeah, and that would be part of the conversation
Yeah.
on that conference call.
I mean, a 1% change in our interest rate due to a change in bond rate, would eat that for you, like,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's.
Yeah, when you look at it on the annual basis, you're right.
And 40 is what I divide 1.2 by 30, right?
Yep.
I guess now it's by 31, potentially. Be more fun.
So- So we need to get that
It's a lot of
answer
risk.
to be able, to have that decision made, but, so if everybody is, you know, good with the report, we can continue to work and report back what we find out. And then, but everything will have to, you know, be yes or no vote at the next meeting.
Yeah,
whether we
it,
proceed or not.
it will have to happen.
There's no question, that vote will be there to not participate or to continue on.
Well, I'll offer one more opinion. You know, for myself, I always love to see us find ways to save money. But I am very concerned about a long-term contract, because when we would have been sitting here talking about Heartland and coal prospects at that time, coal was, you know, everyone's gonna put up a coal power plant, and we're gonna put in these, spend $10–20 million on pollution control, and, you know, really we're focused heading down that path, and man, that worm turned so fast. It really was an incredible thing to watch, and continued to deteriorate instead of, you know, better political support. I look at, there's a thing in here that always continues to jump out at me about there will be a contract reprice in 6 or 7 years. If they're willing to do a contract reprice in 6 or 7 years, then just do a 6 or 7 year contract. And not put us on the hook for 3 decades. Interest rates, was just doing some reading about that today. Interest rates, and which will include municipal rates, are going up, and Fed is gonna be raising rates, and the spread, I think, is gonna be wildly unpredictable. So I'm not sure we're really getting anything out of this unless they would be willing to do something after, in a short period of time.
And my understanding is rates go up, the spread gets bigger.
But the
Right.
municipal rate's gonna go up too.
No, but the spread. Right?
No.
The value of tax-free interest bonds become more favorable as interest rates go up. So if we're locked in at 20 cents now,
But it
2
depends on,
years from now, it
it
could
depends
be
on
at
what the
50 cents.
non-municipal rate is.
Right.
So, you know, it's more because you don't have the tax advantage, but we have a smaller tax burden now too for corporations than what we used to have. Their
That's
rate
true.
has been dropped, you know, so that spread, you know, so I look at that spread as not being a very well-known thing, and whether this will do anything for us at all.
Right.
And if they're willing to reprice the whole thing in 6 or 7 years, then give us a 6 or 7 year contract.
Yeah,
And
they're not willing to do that.
then my vote is gonna be no.
I mean, they won't do a 20-year.
Yeah, they actually go in the other direction, they're going to 31, and they're just saying, you insert the numbers of the interest rates and all the cost of gas, and you go through the formula, and it spits out more than 30 years, you know, so they said, well, would you do 31? And the answer is, we don't know. I mean, would we do 40? You know? 40 is really getting out there, you know? So it's a question that's gonna have to be answered. You know, if there was a consensus, you know, tonight that we're not really interested in it, that's fine. But next month, we will have to make a decision one way or the other. And Roger will, you know, recap all the legal, you know, things that are required at that meeting. So if you wanna hold off and wait for that
You
meeting.
know, and then from their standpoint, I don't know that it necessarily matters if we pull out now or then. Because, you know, it's in the 9th hour anyway, but, you know, it may, if you really don't think you wanna do this, it may be a courtesy to let them know sooner than later. I don't know. It's just-
It'd be hard for them to go to another entity and do everything that we've been doing in the last, in 30 days. It's, you know, just not gonna happen, so.
You know, we're incurring some costs from Peter Scallion's law office in Washington DC, that those costs are gonna be split between Austin, Hutch, and New Ulm. And that was estimated at about $12,000. I'm sure that we're at that. And then I did just get another bill from them for some unique New Ulm questions that Roger had. That was for about $1,200, so that will be due them as well. And depending on what happens with our bond counsel, if there's any costs associated with them, they're gonna have to go and research everything before our conference call. There will be some costs associated with that. So, you know, it's not a free deal, you know. It's not just staff time, there's some attorney time too. I just want you to be aware of that also.
Well, it sure seems we haven't heard anything positive that we would wanna keep incurring these costs and putting the staff through this, right? So are you maybe looking for a motion to?
Well, this was a report, if the PUC felt that there was a motion that they said, you know, we're just not interested anymore, you know, thank you, you know, for the offer, but we're not interested. We got to this point and we're just not seeing any value. That's up to the PUC if you wanna make that. We did not put an active motion on this, memory serves correctly, other than just to receive it and file it, because we had an extra month, you know, to actually make a decision. But if you see the handwriting on the wall kind of a thing and say, you know, based on what we're seeing here, that's, I think it's best to just pull the plug. You can make any motion you want on the topic here.
Okay, so I'll first make a motion to receive and file an update on the prepaid gas transaction with BP Energy and Public Energy Authority of Kentucky. I will secondarily make a motion that we cease the pursuit of the prepaid gas transaction with BP Energy and the Public Energy Authority of Kentucky.
Okay, so on the first motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to receive and file an update on the prepaid gas transaction with BP Energy and the Public Energy Authority of Kentucky, also known as PEAK. All in favor of filing that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we have a second motion to cease activity on this proposal and tell them thanks but no thanks. So is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, there is a second. I think we've had enough discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? And that motion also carries. Item 4A is a resolution. That'll be the first time about that. So I'll entertain an offer for a resolution and waive the reading commending Mary Mowland for 26 years of service with the New Ulm Public Utilities Commission.
I'll offer the resolution and waive the reading commending Mary Mullen for nearly 26 years of service with the New Ulm Public Utility Commission.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. We read the roll.
Commissioner Finland?
Yes.
Commissioner Hillersheim?
Yes.
Commissioner Shawnas?
Yes.
Commissioner Swan?
Yes. Item 4B, authorizing the city manager to accept and sign an order from Page Freezer Software Incorporated.
Good evening. About a year ago, we started using a product called Archive Social to archive all our social media activity. This includes all the social media activity across the city and the PUC. It's really served as two purposes. One is for compliance, in the case that we were asked to produce any kind of information from our social media for open records. It really speeds up that process. Another capability of having this is the ability to go back and look at how our social media is being used. If there were ever any supervisory questions about how staff were using the social media pages, to be able to go back and look to see how things played out. And it could be used as a training opportunity or a way to measure the effectiveness of our social media. During the process, we discovered we had a lot more social media accounts than we had anticipated. Our Archive Social license was for 10 social media accounts. We currently actually have about 12, and there are a few departments that are considering adding more different social media platforms to utilize to reach out to the community. To expand our licensing with Archive Social, they use a tiered structure, so that really bumps us up to the next tier to be able to cover all of these accounts. And that doubled our cost to about $4,788 a year. We had been paying in the last year $2,388. Obviously, when there's a cost increase, the very first thing I do is go out and look to see what else is out there. And we found another provider, Page Freezer, that is used in other communities have used this as well. And their cost is considerably lower because they don't use a tiered system, they just charge by the account. So their cost to add the additional capacity would be $2,700 for a year plus a $300 setup fee. So about $3,000 for this year. So that was a considerable savings over the increase on Archive Social. We had budgeted for the increase to Archive Social for this year. So that would be about a $1,800 savings in our budget for this year.
What are the social media platforms we have within the city?
That's a good question. Primarily, Facebook is probably the biggest used one, but we also have Instagram is another platform that's used. YouTube is another platform that is used, and we believe there's also one department has a Twitter account, and LinkedIn is also a platform that we use as well. And we only have one account with that. We have an overall city PUC account for HR for that. But most of the accounts are Facebook. Some of the new points of contact that other departments are looking at is Snapchat. That's one that's very popular right now. And Park and Rec, for example, they have summer help that are very familiar with some of these platforms, and they'd like to try using them.
So, question, so the purpose of this is basically to archive, make it easier to analyze, review, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we undertook this was till June of last year.
Yeah.
So are people using it in that form? Because you can, I mean, and you state it, but you obviously can go back and look at Facebook history.
Yeah.
Are supervisors using that data as a tool to manage employees, or
We
is
haven't-
this a nice to have?
We haven't used that ability yet, and that's actually something that I need to reach out to supervisors to make sure that they know that they have this capacity. One of the things that it seems kind of superfluous to have it until you actually need it. A great example is when we have a records request for email. For open records request for email communications. We have this really fancy email archiver. We've paid a considerable amount of money for it. The vast majority of the time, we never use it. Actually, there's a burden on me to maintain it. But boy, when we need it, and we've had a few requests, and it really comes in handy. So, it is something a lot of communities struggle with. I actually posed the question out on a mailing group, an email group, and other cities actually determined that they didn't need to do this, and they actually were choosing not to do it. I guess my recommendation is that we at least do this for another year to see if we can utilize it more. Because what in my experience is if you don't have the archiver or an archiving solution, when you do get the request, it's a lot of work for staff to you have to make the request from, say, let's say it's a Facebook communication. It ends up being a pretty big job to go and request the full social media archive, then you gotta search through it and find the data that you're looking for. Whereas these tools provide a good search capability, and then they kind of, they show you the history, deleted items, all the things right there, so it's really easy to get at. Not to say that we couldn't reconstruct that if we did a social media request. I got a dump of our whole account from the whatever platform we requested. But it could be a challenge to do that. I'm open to it either way, but my recommendation would be to give this another year and then reevaluate at the end of that.
So when you said we had 12 accounts, so like every Facebook account, every Twitter account is considered, LinkedIn is considered one of those accounts. Have we looked at whether we have people that are not actively using their accounts that we could get back to 10?
Yeah, there are a couple that have minimal usage, and I think one of the issues is when you have this many accounts, you do end up with a bit of a branding issue. You don't know which account to go for information. Do I go to the Park and Rec website for that, or the Park and Rec Facebook page? Do I go to the city's website for that? Public safety is another one. Do I go to the public safety for that, or the city's official site? Which one's the official site for each platform? So I guess from my perspective, as an IT guy, I kind of would like to see us get rid of some of the accounts and focus on that. But I'm not a decision maker on that. I can just make recommendations. I think it would be possible, but then again, if we do have legitimate use for another one, then that puts us back over in the tier again, and we're not archiving it. And certainly some accounts are more active than others. I think the police department has a wonderfly active one. New Cat has a great YouTube channel with all of our meetings on it. Others just aren't as active.
Yeah, I think if we were a private company, we'd probably be focusing more on how can we use the data to better our company or get in, but our primary reason for archiving this stuff is that these are public communications, and we're a governmental entity, and anybody can ask for that information. And so to retrieve, to have it stored and to retrieve it is our primary goal. It's if we can get to the secondary goal of taking some of the information and making it valuable, it's a information going out process for us. And some of our Facebooks allow communication back, and those communications are the important ones. Ours is good too, but when the public comments to us, even if they say something we don't think would be appropriate for that particular situation, we have to keep that. Even though we may pull it from the site, we've got to keep that communication because it was a public comment. And so it goes into this, so the public don't see it, but we have to have it available if we need to pull it back out. So our purpose is a little bit different than a private company as far as this is concerned.
Yeah, and I think other communities might choose to not have the interaction. Facebook, they turn off all of the communications, and it basically becomes a broadcast medium. And in that scenario, you really don't have the requirement to archive it because it's out there. It's all publicly available. It's when you have that communication back that gets to, it kind of triggers the next step where we have an obligation to be able to reproduce it.
Right. So I guess from my opinion, I get to a comfort level of that it's the archiving is the reason to hold it around. My ask would be that given that the page freezer is based on a number of accounts, that we do evaluate and we don't have dead accounts that are there as a nice to have, but we barely ever use them, and we could have used something else than like a public safety or park and rec or whatever. So, I don't know if there's any other thoughts.
Okay, any other questions or discussion?
Just from a legal perspective, I'd be real reluctant to stop doing this, because I think the trend is definitely going towards, we're gonna start seeing these requests, and there's gonna be some expectation that we act quickly, so I think we'd really wanna take a long, hard look before we withdraw from a program like.
I agree.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion authorizing the city manager to accept and sign the order for service from Page Freeze Software Incorporated. Page Freeze Software.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Item 4C is proposal for cost, service, and rate study for electric and steam utilities.
Commissioners, at the March 27th meeting, the commission authorized staff to prepare a request for proposal for a rate study and cost of service study for the electric and steam department. Staff has done the RFP. We sent it to 4 companies. One company declined to respond. They didn't have the expertise in the steam area. We did receive 3 proposals. From the 3 proposals, we reviewed them and have chosen Dave Berg Consulting. Mr. Berg has done multiple rate studies and other financial services for other municipal utilities. He's also very versed in the relationship between the electric and the steam department. And he also was low bid. He has done some other work for us that we've been very pleased with. So he included in his bid 2 options for the services. We're choosing option 1, which is a fixed fee of $20,000 plus any applicable expenses, which would include any travel, meals, copying services, etc. And he's estimating that not to really exceed $500. So I guess I'm here asking that you accept the proposal for the cost of service and rate study from Dave Berg Consulting.
And did you say, Chris, I apologize, the option 1 or option 2?
Option 1,
Option 1.
yeah. He could do it by time and material, but he prefers to do it by, and he quoted both. They were within $500 of each other. Option 1 actually was the least expensive, so.
Right.
I'll make a motion authorizing the city manager to accept the proposal for a cost of service and rate study for the electric and steam utilities from Dave Berg Consulting LLC in the amount of $20,000 plus applicable expenses.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The last item on the agenda is a list of claims to be paid and paid.
I'll offer the motion to accept the list of claims paid in the amount of $2,331,006.97 and approve the list of claims to be paid in the amount of $266,577.91.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any other business, commissioners? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.